Hello and welcome to a special episode of To The Point. In 5 days' time, Mr. Narendra Modi will have completed a full year as Prime Minister of India. Tonight we present a special and exclusive interview with the Railways Minister Suresh Prabhu. In part 1, he'll talk about the challenges he faces as Railways Minister as he tackles what must be perhaps the most difficult portfolio in the government of India. And in part 2, he'll talk about the Modi government itself. How has it fulfilled the enormous expectations that it carries? To what extent has it succeeded? And to what extent has it proved to be inadequate? Mr. Prabhu, at the time you took charge as Railway Minister, you said the railway's condition was more precarious than a patient in ICU. How much has the patient's health improved since you've been Minister for the last 6 months?
You know, when your patient is in ICU, he could be there for various different reasons, depending upon the type of disease he's suffering from. One could be out in a day because he has some stroke, something can happen and quickly doctor could put him back into the normal ward, or if it is very critical and particularly chronic diseases which are not being attended to for a long time, it might take a little longer. So I think the railways, first of all, we should understand why the railways had this problem. So railways problem was essentially arising out of the fact that we have not invested into upkeep of the railways to make sure that the decongestion issues are addressed and looking at some of the critical safety issues like signaling and others. So that would mean that to bring the patient out of ICU, you need to address these challenges for which you need to make investment.
Absolutely. As you say, there's a whole lot of challenges and most of them arise out of the fact that the railways have been neglected, not for 1 or 2 years, but maybe for decades. Which means that you have to put right what many ministers before you failed to do. Is that right?
You know, it's of course, I would, first of all, I believe that by blaming anybody else, I don't solve my today's problem.
I'm not asking you to blame them, but it's a history of problems you have to attend to.
No, but I certainly agree with the point that, we have not invested enough. We have ignored railways of their bare minimum necessities of what should have been done to them. And therefore now, we have an accumulated problem of years which need to be addressed and which I have highlighted in my white paper which I presented to the Parliament.
Absolutely, and I'll come to the white paper in a moment's time, but first let me quote to you from Dinesh Trivedi's Parliamentary Committee report released in April last month. He says that the railways are in the grip of what he calls a severe financial crisis. He says you have declining productivity, rising costs of operation, and now, worst of all, you have an unrealistic operating ratio. How much of that do you agree with?
If he's talking about the past, I agree with him fully, because this is what the reality.
And if he's talking about the present?
And the present is still to begin, because in fact, to tell you, 2014-15, the year that we just completed, our operating ratio is better than what it was even contemplated a year ago. So operating ratio has improved, but not improved as much as I would like it to be improved. So that's one part.
Let me stop you there. Let me take you up on the operating ratio for 2014-15, because that is something Dinesh Trivedi and his panel have commented on. They say that actual earnings for 14-15 will be 2,500 crore less than revised estimates. As a result, your operating ratio, which you put at 91.8, will probably slip to 92.5, maybe 93.5. And then he adds that
it has actually improved. And probably this final figures are compiled because they were all the revised estimates, but now we'll get a real numbers, maybe far better, I mean not far, but it will definitely better than what it was earlier thought.
Except that he says, and I'm quoting Dinesh Trivedi, that if you had made adequate provision for depreciation, which he claims you haven't done, your operating ratio, he claims, would be close to 100 for 2014-15.
Absolutely, I agree with him. Had he provided for it when he was a minister, for the depreciation ratio adequately, the ratio would have been more than probably 120%, because that is what he is trying to talk about.
So this problem applies to his time just as it does to yours.
I understand him because he has treated the patient. Therefore, what he has prescribed as a medicine, he could not apply. I fully appreciate for whatever reason. I am doing the same thing. So I hope that another doctor, only because the patient has changed hands and another doctor is treating him, we should not just allow the patient to be neglected.
All right, one other thing about operating ratios. You have set an operating ratio target of 88 for the next year, which is a huge improvement on anything we've seen in the recent past. But that target is dependent, at least in part, on your achieving an increase in freight of 85 million tons. Now, Reuters has reported earlier this month that you face a daily shortfall of 2,000 wagons for carrying coal, and 42 million tons out of the 85 million ton target is coal. So doesn't it seem as if next year you're going to miss your 8.8 operating ratio target?
Very good point. Let me tell you, 50% of a total cargo that we handle is 2/3 of the revenue come from the cargo and half of that comes from coal. We have done many things. One, why was the cargo last year was a bad year for the coal sector? This year the coal is improving. So what we need to do? I already signed an agreement for evacuation of coal by money. I don't use my money, by money of the coal ministry, because they lie over a huge cash pile of maybe 40-50,000 crores. So I told them to give part of that money. We put up the line. First MOU has been signed with Odisha, Coal India and our ministry. Second MOU we signed with Jharkhand, my ministry and Coal India.
And this will take care of
the coal. One.
This will take care of the coal wagon shortage of 2,000 a day?
Now second I'll tell you. We are already asking, first time, this is for the first time, maybe to the tune of few thousand crores, maybe 5,000, but that's for the figure has to be allowed. I am allowing the Coal India to buy wagons from their own money, which never had happened before. Using their money, they will buy the wagons. So now where is the wagon shortage? So this, we need ideas.
So in fact, what you've done is you found an innovative and clever way around the problem.
That's right.
What you do is you're conceding the problem exists, but you found a clever solution around
That's
it.
right.
So you're confident next year 8.8 will be achieved as your operating ratio.
First of all, they are dependent on very variables. Like I don't know exactly even today what will be the price of diesel that is going to increase, but we are working on many things. First, we have increased our target for handling cargo to 1,200 million tons. But for doing that, I had all the zonal managers. See who handle the cargo. It is in zones and divisions. I have interacted with more or less all of them personally in the first few days of presenting the budget. I asked.
But have you given them personal responsibility to ensure
absolutely.
this? And so now you're hoping that having given them responsibility, they will fulfill it.
Absolutely.
So you're relying on two things: innovative handling of the wagon shortage problem by allowing the coal ministry to buy the wagons, and secondly, you're relying on the fact that you're delegating powers and you're hoping that people to whom you've delegated will fulfill the responsibility.
I know. And now, of course, if anybody is expecting, including my good friend in the parliament, that I should go and lift the cargo myself of 1,200 million tons, I would be very happy that he is what expecting. It is a combined effort.
Absolutely.
I have to get it from the DRMs, I have to get the divisional managers, I have to ask my divisions, my zones to do it, and I talk to each one of them.
This
and not
I
only
understand.
that, see what we did.
Let's not get lost in details, because the details will
only
confuse.
small point I'll tell you. Just small point. What we did was, we had a meeting here in which the entire board was sitting on one side and the division and all the officers who are going to handle
on the
other side. I told them, this is an outcome. Are you ready? He said yes. What is the input you want to make this happen? Because there are so many issues on which
what was the answer?
We don't give up. Each one of them, they told us this we want. I assigned that responsibility to individual members. Chairman of the railway board, members of the railway board are monitoring it and getting it done.
So they have no excuse now not to fulfill the duty you've given them.
Plus,
let's then come back at this point to the analogy we began with. You said that the railways was like a precarious patient in ICU. You've taken several steps to help the patient come back to health. But will you accept one thing? The patient is so ill, the illness is so chronic, the neglect has been so long that it's going to take a long time and maybe a difficult time before the patient comes to full health. Recovery may be progressive, but it is bound to be slow.
There are two things. You are absolutely right. First of all, we should not be kidding with ourselves by saying that I will be able to put line which was not done in 20-25 years, so I must do it in 1 year. It is impossible.
You have to be realistic.
Minimum time that is required is 3 to 5 years. So what we did was, we have taken up projects for doubling, tripling electrification. Why those? Because this will actually decongest the lines, which will improve the efficiency of operation. It might reduce the cost of operation because of electrification, and we'll be able to do it in the shortest possible time. But that shortest possible time can be condensed from 5 years to maybe 3.5 years, but cannot be done in 1 year.
In other words, you still have a struggle of 3 or 4 years ahead of you before you can say the patient is out of ICU.
That is for structural issues, but I am not waiting for that. What I did was, therefore, I am focusing on two things. One is structural issues, augmentation capacity, electrification, safety, signaling, modernization, technology, one part. That will take some time. But while that is being done, I am using the same technology, same ideas to offer better service to the customers. I'll give an example.
And that is in fact your future plan for the railways, not just better services, but you're also gearing up the railways for a future in a country that is changing. That's the second part I want to talk about. Your budget presented a vision of the future which was enticing. But it depends upon one critical factor, 8.5 lakh crore of investment in 5 years. Now you're going to get that money either from the Asian Development Bank or the World Bank, or from the LIC, or you're going to get it from sovereign pension funds, the National Investment Infrastructure Fund, or tax-free bonds. All of those are debt. Apart from what Mr. Jaitley gives you in the budget, which is not going to be very much more than 40-50,000 crore, the rest is debt. Now, can the railways A, service and B, repay this quantum of debt?
Yes. Now, Karan, you must give me a little time to explain this. This is a very important issue. First of all, let me come to the, out of which more than half is not debt. We'll get at least 4 lakh crores if you take 50,000 crores a year from the finance ministry, which we got 40,000 crores this
Has
year.
he guaranteed it every year?
No, this is more than what last year we got. This is because of our government coming in. We got it 40,000 crores this year.
But you're confident he'll give you 40,000 every year?
But he has said more than that. So I take it as 5 years, at least 2 lakh to 2 lakh 50,000 crores. Money very realistically. It may be more, but I'm taking only that. That's not debt. Our internal generation will be at least 1 lakh crore. Then I'm taking a minimum, bare minimum, which is in fact the depreciation and everything, so to take care of it. That is 3 lakh 1 lakh 50,000 crore out of this is by development of stations, PPP, etc., which is not my money, which is not a debt on me. So what is the debt we are taking? We are taking a debt which is hardly not even 2 lakh 50,000 crores. Hardly.
Which is manageable.
And not only manageable, what is the issue? Let me give me just 2 minutes to explain this point. It's a very important point. If I don't invest, the railways will go downhill.
That I understand.
So this is a patient, as you said, if I don't have the money, my mother is in the ICU, I should just look around and find out a theoretical solution to the problem and just write a report on this, or I should go and beg, borrow, steal and cure my mother. So that is what we are doing by making sure that my mother is cured, she will not die, but I will bring her back to the normal situation.
I don't worry about what you beg and what you steal, because you don't have to return that. But it's the borrowing bit I'm worried about.
But that is something, 30
and you're saying to me it's contained
that is the point I wanted to tell you. So firstly, we have got a complete repayment program. It is overseen by some eminent people like K.V. Kamath, Arundhati Bhattacharya, Rajiv Lal, Raghu Bail. They are all eminent people in their own field. They know exactly what you're doing. We are putting processes in place. And when you actually put this money, the investment will lead to higher income. Just let me tell you, our target in 5 years is to increase our cargo from 1 billion ton to 1.5 billion ton. What is the effect? Your income will rise not by 50%, but maybe 80%.
All of
and
which
expenditure will not increase that much.
All of which means that the debt component of the 8.5 lakh is a manageable component.
More than manageable.
You're saying it will be probably no more than 3 lakh death, or 3.5 lakh
even
death.
if whatever is the debt, that debt will actually improve the capacity. So that's the point I was telling you. See, if you don't invest, the patient dies. If you invest, the improvement of the patient is not just in terms of repayment of debt, but that will increase the viability of the railway.
I understand that. Now, one critical component in the guarantee that you're giving me that you can manage 8.5 lakh investment without incurring a huge component of debt is in fact your relationship with the private sector and the fact that you wish to involve the private sector. The problem is, earlier this month in an interview to PTI, you made it clear there will be no privatization. Your exact words were, the railways will continue to be owned by the government of India and, importantly, managed by the government of India. Now, my question is this: what happens to the announcement in November, just before you took over, that in 17 specified sectors, you will permit 100% private or foreign investment? If you don't allow them to manage,
now you must
and if you don't allow them to own,
you ask me a long
why will
question,
they
you must allow me to answer it properly, because this is confusing. There is no confusion here. What is meaning of privatization? Privatization, the meaning is that we sell the entire enterprise to another person.
That I understand.
But is it that something which we have ever said before, or any report has said it? Not the Bebek Debra committee report, not any of the earlier reports ever contemplated it, including Rakesh Mohan committee report. So privatization of railway was never on the agenda.
But then how do you handle 100% private
That is
equity?
what I'm saying. So let me just, please give me time to explain this to you. So first of all, privatization does not mean selling of railways, which was never contemplated. Has anybody contemplated selling of railways as a
leave that out.
enterprise?
Leave that out.
That's what I mean by that interview. So now come to the basic point. We are open for private investment, so which I've been saying repeatedly, and I'm saying it today.
But up to 100%.
No, 100% of that particular sector.
But then in that particular sector, the private entity will control it.
If you are doing a private freight terminal, That is a separate enterprise of the railways.
So it's private
in which somebody
contracting.
wants to come in that private freight terminal.
So we're talking about private contracting. In other words, you will
But
hive
you are not
off
allowing me to answer. So, because then you ask me question, I will not be able to answer.
Go ahead,
You
go
ask
ahead.
long question, I will not be able to explain to you. What I am telling you is, if 100% meaning is there is a project in which 100% FDI is allowed, that doesn't mean that the railways as an enterprise is up for sale. So there is nothing like railways 100% ownership is transferred. Suppose you are putting a station development program. That's a project in itself. In that station development, 100% of the investment can be made by the private sector. So that station development program in station, say you are developing a New Delhi station, 100%
Can I ask two questions for clarification? In that station, to take the example, if 100% is private investment, is the station owned by the private company?
But that depends upon the system. That is what I am telling you. The station development is a program in which we are contemplating that private companies can come and develop a station.
So this sounds like private contracting. In other words, you will create entities which the railways may or may not own, but which will be 100% given over to a private enterprise to run and manage because they've put in the investment. Leave ownership out of it for now, but your private contracting services or divisions or sectors of the railways
Depending upon which sector.
Absolutely.
We have already got a PPP model which is on the website, which already is very clear. So this is why I am saying there is a confusion between what I have said earlier and what I am saying now, or what the PTI interview says. This is unfortunately, this is what is the problem. See, we pick up only headlines today also, but we should not, we should look into the fine print. What I am saying yesterday and today and tomorrow is the same thing, that railways as an enterprise is a government of India department. So just imagine a government of India department. Can a defense ministry be privatized?
No, I understand. What you're talking about is not privatization in the sense of ownership. You're talking about private contracting. You're talking about dividing the railways into different sectors or divisions and allowing one or two or certain specified sectors to be run by private entities.
I'll give you another example.
Briefly.
See, wagon manufacturing, locomotive manufacturing, 100% investment can be made by the private sector. So that is what we made by 100%. So private capital is most welcome, and this is safeguard. In fact, to safeguard it better, I am creating a regulatory framework. I am revamping the PPP cell. So all of that we are doing. So this is no confusion, there is no contradiction.
That I understand. One last question about the future. You created this vision, and it's very much a part of your rhetoric, that the future includes bullet trains. That's caught the fancy of rich upper class, rich middle class Indians. But in a country where 29% live below the poverty line, and maybe another 25% live just above the poverty line, is a bullet train a priority, or is it a mistaken idea?
If you have read my budget, we are not provided any amount of money for the bullet train. 100% of the money, that the public money that we are raising, we are actually using that money for the betterment of common man, better services of the people.
Bullet trains are entirely private investment.
This will come from, say, Japanese government wants to come and invest, Japanese government wants to come and invest in that sector. That is not something which is going to put any resources diverted from that purpose.
That I understand, but who will then run the bullet trains? If the bullet trains are 100% Japanese investment, will they run it?
But that we have to decide. We'll have to decide all that. This is the feasibility study.
Question. It's an open question.
The feasibility studies are being done, and this is something which I will tell you. Those people asking the question, they were in the government when they decided to do this. My predecessors have gone to Japan to promote these ideas, or wanting to go to Japan. Sometimes it was thwarted by some political process, that's why they could not go for the same purpose. So we are continuing with that in some way, but we are making sure that the bullet train will not compromise with the interest of the common people who are travelling otherwise. This is not a conflict with one another. No, this is something which is completely different project. This is a different project.
Minister, you made it very clear, Minister, that the bullet train will not compromise between the essential services you provide for the common man. The bullet train is a separate entity. It will be run by investment that comes in entirely from outside. My question is this: if the bullet train is entirely dependent on Japanese or Chinese or German or French investment, and they're putting a lot of money in because bullet trains aren't cheap, they will then own the bullet train section. Ownership of the bullet train will be theirs. And presumably they will want to manage it and run it. So then will you have two railway systems in the country, one that you run and one the Japanese run?
I'm really surprised by sometimes we should be very clear about what we want. You mean to say India is poor, that's why we stop airlines? Because poor can never afford airlines. The same poor that we are talking about, can they ever afford to go by airlines? Are the same poor that we talk about, they have the ability to go to the 5-star hotel? Should we stop all the 5-star hotels in India? Is it something you are trying to advocate? Secondly, on the one hand you are saying privatization should be there, or the second time when you are saying that somebody is going to come and make investment and run it, that is bad. So what is that we want?
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm asking for clarification.
No, so therefore the clarification should be such. I can offer a clarification if there is no confusion. If there is a confusion, but I see there is no reason for a confusion. So secondly, we are much sure that, for example, if at all you want bullet train anytime in our lifetime, then the technology is not with us. So technology, like we did we have the technology to manufacture Bharat Heavy Electricals when we set up that company? Did we have the technology? Did we have the technology to make nuclear power in India? We had to do something, we had to collaborate with somebody. Did we have the technology?
The same applies to bullet trains.
But same thing.
So
if
then
you
you're
want
saying
a technological advancement in India,
you're saying
and we don't have it, the world is moving in one particular direction, we are not compromising with our basic necessities of the common people of India.
We're adding to that.
Yeah.
You're saying something very interesting. Let me give you an analogy which perhaps explains the situation. You're saying it's a bit like airlines. You have Air India, you will have the Indian Railways. But in India, you also have British Airways, you have Lufthansa, you have Swissair, you have Emirates. They all operate out of India. Similarly, you could have bullet trains that are run by the Japanese or the French or the Germans, which will also operate out of India. They will exist side by side with Indian Railways. Indian Railways will provide the core essential service for 90% of the people. The other 10% will be serviced by the bullet train wherever it comes from.
So I think you have given me a very good idea. And I'm very glad that this idea is something which will definitely look into the idea. What I'm just saying is, for any airlines, for the model like airline to be applied to any other sector, we must make sure there is a capacity to operate. Today, our trains are getting late because there is no room for maneuverability. They cannot run the trains on the track because the tracks are clogged. So if you do not first add capacity, forget the other trains, our own trains cannot ply. So we must first create a capacity. So everything that we talk about has to be a sequencing. We must first do something so that others can follow.
That I understand. Let me come back to bullet trains for one last question before I then change the subject altogether. I understand what you're saying. The audience will understand what you're saying. And many people like me will be grateful that you are finding a way of making bullet trains possible, even if it's only for 10% of the population, side by side, improving the railways, which is for 90%. Are you worried that the opposition will turn around in Parliament and say that you're creating two railway systems where there used to be one, that you're creating a special system only for the rich, that this in fact is creating opportunities or privileges that only 10% share? Are you worried about that sort of attack that you could face?
Where is that conflict? Even today, for everything we have two. We have a pan bidi shop and we have got a same pan bidi is available at some top shop. There are people who buy tea at a tapri and they go to the 5-star hotel and pay probably 100 times more than that for that tea. So this is the choice that customers must be able to exercise. A society that is really aspiring, we are having a growing middle class, people want, and this is not a question of just a luxury. Connectivity, I'll just give you this. China has been able to achieve the 10-11% growth rate, not only because of their ability to make manufacturing. The manufacturing was possible because of connectivity. The connectivity has brought in the huge benefits to the Chinese economy. So if you fail to bring in connectivity, we do not bring the average speed. It's not just road, rail, sea, air, all the connectivities must be happening in such a way that the cost of doing business, time of doing business will go down so that people will get jobs.
Minister,
poor will come out of that.
Minister, this is an argument I understand, appreciate, and I'm glad to hear. The problem is, it's an argument that is actually meant for middle class, intelligent, educated Indians. Is it an argument that will work with people who can so easily be led astray by opposition talk about pro-rich and anti-poor? That's the problem you face. I'm with you, but Rahul Gandhi and the left and Mamata Banerjee accuse you of being pro-rich and anti-poor. To them, this may look like as if you're giving them fodder.
I don't want to give the details. Maybe one day I will issue a proper white paper if you want, as to how many parties and how many ministers before me have pursued this idea. If they had this aversion to this idea of bullet train, I would tell you how many have pursued this idea.
That's a very interesting thing. Many of your opponents have been pursuing it.
I don't want to tell you. One day I can give the information to benefit of everybody. Secondly, if you want, I can give you the information about those who talked about these modern stations, good stations, and did not happen. So some of the ideas that have been talked about before could not happen, and now just because we are not in the government, those people want to oppose it. I really feel that, are we doing a national service, or we are that time honest to pursue this idea, or are we honest with this opposition that we are today?
So in fact what you're saying to me is that when it comes to the political problem of handling the possible backlash or criticism you'll face, You're capable of doing it. You're not worried. You're not daunted.
No, but first of all, what criticism I don't understand. Somebody wants to raise an issue which is, first of all, is India. We want to increase the speed of the train for common people. That's what we are doing. It is not the bullet train is our only project. That's one of the small projects I would say in terms of my idea.
In other words, you're saying to people, look at what...
If you ask my bandwidth time, my 99.9% of the time as a minister is going for improving the service of the railways today, of finding out a solution to today's problem. This is a small project which is going on for years. I am trying to put to fruition.
All right, Minister, that's perfectly clear. On that particular project, I wish you not just good luck, I also wish you good luck in convincing the opposition, because even though you're confident you can handle it, I suspect that this could become a big challenge. Not the idea, but the criticism the idea could provoke. I'm going to take a break at that point. When I come back, I want to change the subject and talk to you no longer about the railways. I want to talk to you about 1 year of the Modi government, because I think that's another big issue on which I'm sure you have a lot to say. We'll be back in a moment's time.